Hi, Mike Brentley, auctioneer. Discussing today if auctioneers can bid and thus buy at their own auctions. And largely the answer is yes. But the key component here right off the bat is you've got to get your seller's consent and do that in the contract. Disclose to your seller, owner, or whoever signed the contract, put right in there, auctioneer, maybe staff, maybe clerk, cashier, ring person, whoever, auctioneer and staff can bid at the auction. And of course, if you can bid, you have the opportunity to buy. I think bidding is probably far enough on that words to indicate that you can participate in the auction to bid and thus buy. Now, once you bid and buy as an auctioneer, you are in a what we call a dual agency situation, because on the one hand, you're working for the seller to maximize the price. On the other hand, you're representing yourself as a bidder, buyer. And so you represent two interests, both sides of a transaction. In many states, real estate is governed in that if you become a dual agent or act as a dual agent, you can't disclose to either party or advocate for either party. And obviously, an auctioneer with a real property, subject property, would be advocating on behalf of the seller, which we would not be allowed in a dual agency situation, advocating for either party. So it would be difficult for me to see where in a real estate transaction or real property transaction that an auctioneer would participate both as the bid caller and as a bidder or buyer. And maybe in a situation like that, it's better to step aside, let someone else bid or buy. There are a few states that strictly prohibit auctioneers from participating in a dual agency situation for real property. I don't know of any state outside of Pennsylvania where the auctioneer could not bid while bid calling on personal property. Pennsylvania has a law, as I understand it, that auctioneers can't bid while they're bid calling. They'd have to step off the block or get out of that relationship, or to some degree step away, and then they could participate. Lastly, I saw some notes from a auctioneer seller situation where the seller said, well, I don't mind if you're buying to keep, but I don't want you to buy to resell. Now, it's interesting. I can buy if I want to take it home, but you don't want me buying to flip or sell or put on eBay a week later, a month later, a year later. Or what if I get it home, my neighbor comes over and says, hey, that's a great looking lawnmower. And I said, well, yeah, I picked it up today at the auction. He said, I give you $300 for it. Well, I only paid $200. Yeah. And I get along with my neighbor. Let's just say $250. I don't want to make a killing on it here. Yeah, I'll sell it. The seller says, well, wait a minute. I thought you bought that to keep. I was willing to let you bid at my auction if you were going to keep the item, but I was not willing to let you bid or buy if you were buying to resell, or ended up reselling it, I suppose. I think that's a hard line to draw. You know, how long do I have to keep the item before I could resell it if I bought it to keep? What if could I change my mind? Doesn't matter what my intent was when I was bidding. If I was buying with the full intent to resell versus the intent to keep, should it matter? The bid's the same. And otherwise, I do know auctioneers who say, I don't bid at my own auctions. It's not proper to bid at my own auctions, personal property particularly. And I would argue it actually is proper. If you're interested as the auctioneer in an item and you don't bid, and that bid comes in less or far less than what you were willing to pay, you're actually injuring your client. It would be in your client's interest for you to bid and participate. And how you would structure that participation, the issue sometimes is the auctioneer bids while bid calling, maybe even gesturing to himself or herself, I'm the bidder, then you're the bidder, I'm the bidder, that type of thing. And some bidders say, well, I don't want to bid against the auctioneer, and that could actually depress prices. So I think the auctioneer reserving the right to bid in a personal property auction, again, outside of Pennsylvania or otherwise prohibited, is probably in the seller's best interest. Whether the auctioneer bids during the auction himself or herself, or assigns that job, or leaves an absentee bid or proxy bid with the clerk or someone else to bid for the auctioneer, that might be, in some cases, a better way to handle it than bidding while bid calling. So do auctioneers bid and buy at their own auctions? I think a lot of auctioneers would say they do. I know some auctioneers that say they don't. I think with proper disclosure, memorializing it in the contract with the seller, I think also announcements to the crowd, auctioneer staff reserve the right to bid and buy, just like you. We're trying to get all we can for our seller here, is prudent. And I think generally auctioneers bidding while they're bid calling is probably not an ideal circumstance, but assigning that to someone else is probably better. Mike Brantley, Auctioneer. Pleasure to be with you today. Other videos on this same page, others forthcoming. Have a great day and stay safe.